Hello everyone. There's also a very interesting, quite sort of artistic game called Rain, just Rain, and it was developed by Acquire and Japan Studio. It was released as a digital download on PSN in 2013. The digital version is available in all regions, but the physical disc edition is extremely limited. Only in Japan, only with Japanese language, and then there was one release for Hong Kong and Taiwan containing English and traditional Chinese. This last version is the only way to acquire an English language copy of the game in physical form, making it a sought after collectible. And that would be one of those where you can easily see very high prices being achieved. It's one of the few cases I'm aware of on the PlayStation 3. I have played it a bit, my digital copy. It reminds me vaguely of Eco, probably because of the colour scheme. It's all sort of greyish tones, and movement is sort of just slightly clunky. It relies on the basic game mechanic that you are visible if you're in the rain, visible to enemies in particular, so you have to keep out of the rain. This is Rain, developed by Acquire and Japan Studio and released in 2013. A quick overview of the very simple control scheme. This is the introduction, which I have edited down a bit, so you can get the backstory quite quickly. And here we begin. As you can see, it's all quite dark and murky, rain-washed, and it's all text. There is no voice acting at all in the game. I would have quite liked for the narration to be done by an overvoice narrator, but they decided otherwise. And we see straight away that there is a menacing presence there, the unknown. And you work your way through the chapters in the game, having to eventually defeat the unknown. We're being introduced here to the main mechanism of the game, which of course has to do with the rain and visibility. This is the first of many scenes where you need to run and escape from one of the monsters. I want to show you chapter 1, heavily edited because I want to focus on certain gameplay elements to give you a good impression of how the game works. The first thing we learn is some basic platforming. And it is often the only way the boy has of staying clear of the dangerous presences. I think the soundtrack is really good, both the environmental sounds as well as the music. Full marks there to the composer. You can see here that the only way to track your own movements is by the footsteps you see on the ground, or if you knock over an object. It can make it awkward and difficult at times, especially when you're close to enemies. This is sometimes easier said than done, escaping from the beasts into a rain-free zone. And here you see they're suddenly chasing him, those incredibly ugly dog-like creatures. You have to judge distance and running speed very well in order to escape. It is very, very easy to get caught. And you will die many times. So now they're gone, the boy needs to backtrack, try and find the girl. And here he sees her. She's hiding under the canopy, and the dogs can't see her. The dogs have conveniently broken down the gate so he can finally get through that way. But sometimes you discover there are cul-de-sacs or doors that don't open. Coming down the steps, he sees the dogs chasing yet again after the girl. I hope you can spot me here in the murky conditions on top of the crate and then jumping over. And suddenly the camera shows us a large square with several dogs. The boy is forced to jump down, you can't control that, and come into the square from the other side. As you can see, I'm trying to get him through behind the dogs. It took me 2 attempts. I had to wait very patiently until I made it through to there, and then immediately onto me. And I managed to fall down. It's not super precise, the whole climbing thing. And of course you can't see that well. But finally I make it across and see the girl again. I'm not sure whether I could have got rid of any of the dogs, defeated them there in the square. I didn't see any means of doing so. So this is now a mini puzzle because he can't jump up onto the scaffolding, so has to work out a way of destroying it. The only way is to entice the dogs to run after him. I wanted to show you a death scene. As I said before, distance and timing are crucial, and you will probably have to repeat several such scenes just as I had to. And here you see the dog half destroying the scaffolding. Now the boy has to run off and find another dog, and it's quite a trek. And here working out the exact distance to bait the dog but not get caught up is quite tricky. You develop a feel for it as you get into the game. But it can be quite heart-pounding, to be honest. I found it quite scary at times. And now he can finally jump on the scaffolding and make the journey across to catch up with the girl. And that is the end of Chapter 1. I hope you enjoyed it. I know some people absolutely love the game and rate it quite highly. I'm just not someone who's very happy with that type of quite restrictive gameplay mechanic. I'm guilty of getting bored quite easily, I'm afraid. That can be a failing, yes. I sort of lose interest and wander away. Yeah, I'm the type of person who loves an RPG with hundreds of statistics to manage and lots of skill trees and equipment to look after, and that's my jam. You know, it would take a lot for me to play through a whole game having to hide out of the rain. Let's put it like that. But golly, if I ever saw a physical copy of that game and at an affordable price, I certainly would jump on it. My collector's heart would sing. I just remembered I have a game called Starhawk. It's considered a spiritual successor to a much older game called Warhawk, and it's a third-person shooter that was certainly immensely popular among gaming communities here in New Zealand. So considering it came out in 2012, so 10 years ago, I would assume that the online component for multiplayer has been shut down. But I really don't know because I never in the end played the game. But when I saw a still sealed copy of it somewhere, I just decided to get it, because it was very well regarded and played by many people. So I thought, well, good game to have in my collection. And being a third-person shooter is certainly something that I'd be more likely to play than a first-person shooter. It's of course possible that new online servers have been set up to keep the game going, as I know has happened with some classic multiplayer games where the platform holder decided to let it go, and people gathered together and made their own arrangements for keeping playing online. That is happening more and more, I see, with certain games. If you know anything about Starhawk, let me know. Another true exclusive. Yes, I just checked it. I see certainly in my region it is still there on the online store, available digitally. And that's Starhawk, a very popular third-person shooter in its day. Another very unusual game would be Tokyo Jungle. Most people would probably know it in the digital version. There were physical editions published, but they can be quite difficult to track down these days. Most of them are Japan copies with only Japanese language. I think there is an Asian release that included English subtitles, but you'll have to put on your hunting boots to find that one. I don't think the prices are not astronomical, but the availability of a copy and finding one is certainly a challenge. I haven't looked for it specifically. I know a lot of people absolutely love the game, and I'm sort of more, it's a pretty good game, but it doesn't quite hit the right notes with me. Being a survival game in a sort of strange, maybe post-apocalyptic environment where only animals roam around, and you have to survive, etc. So once again, very unusual, developed again, I mentioned it now for the second time, the name by Crispies, together with Japan Studio. They did come up with really, really unusual ideas and stories. So if you ever see a copy of that includes some kind of English language option, I would say jump on it. It's very unusual and quite sought after these days, that people look more closely now at the PlayStation 3 because it's just it's not retro yet, but we'll be heading that way. And the last one I just want to mention, the last one in the alphabet, is Yakuza Dead Souls. I've actually never seen a copy, and that is a PlayStation 3 exclusive, and I think might be quite tricky to get hold of and fairly expensive these days. It's listed on price charting for CIB at $65 average, and new at least 75, so we're getting reasonably high. So I hope that has rounded out your understanding of PlayStation 3 collecting and given you an insight into my own personal collection. And maybe you can take away something from that will help you in your own projects. So me and P Waka Waka, we're saying goodbye for today. As you can see, it's not too difficult and not too expensive yet to collect for the PS3. I had a good head start because I naturally fell into it as from 2013 onwards, but in many locations, especially in North America, there are still plenty of copies on the market everywhere, from what I hear. I've had a really great time buying games for PS3. I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and because I like the PS3, it just makes sense for me and I find it rewarding. If the platform doesn't mean anything to you, if you don't like the PS3, then I don't see any reason to collect for it. I really think it makes sense to collect for that which you love and enjoy. So feel free to post your questions about any of my collecting video games videos. Thank you very much, as always. Please keep well. I'm Food for Dogs. Bye-bye.